Do you want to learn how to take star photographs like this? So exciting! Today we're going to be learning how to photograph stars, and to do this you're going to need a camera that can do manual mode, a good tripod, a torch and some tape. We will need a good dark night that has no clouds and no moon. Also a location that is out of the city that has no light pollution. I scouted out a location a little bit earlier today, and all we have to do now is wait for it to get dark. How do we set up our camera? First, we need to find a spot that has an interesting foreground in it, so we have something other than just stars in our image to give it more punch. Once we have our location, we then have to zoom our lens out as far as it can go. My widest setting is 24mm, but yours may go lower, perhaps to 18mm or something like that. Once we're fully zoomed out, we need to set our focus. Go into the live view mode if your camera has it. Find an object that is quite far into the distance and then focus in on it. Once your camera has the focus, find the switch on your lens that puts your camera into manual focus. Some cameras don't have the manual focus switch on the lens. This one has a stabilizer and the manual focus switch is on the back. The reason we're banging our camera into manual focus is because we don't want our camera to try and refocus when it gets dark, and then we'll have problems. Once we've set our focus, we don't want to touch the zoom on the camera because we may lose our focus. I marked the focus point on the focus ring here with a piece of tape, so that if for some reason I knock my focus ring or something changes, I can find that focus point again easily. I'll explain other ways of focusing in the dark a little bit later. Or you could do a search online for focusing in the dark and you can find whole tutorials just on that. Okay, with our focus sorted and the light starting to fade, we'll be locking in our other camera settings so we're ready to rock and roll when it gets dark. First, we have to put our camera into manual mode. Find the dial and turn it around to manual. Your camera dial might look a little different to this, but the idea is the same, you just have to look for that M. Once in manual mode, we have to adjust 3 settings. The first one is ISO. The second one is shutter speed. And the third one is aperture. What are those 3 things and how do you change them? Well, depending on what camera you have, you usually have a couple of dials and a display screen which has the settings on it. If you have a touch screen, it is even easier. So the first thing we will adjust is the ISO. This controls how sensitive our camera's sensor is to light. ISO starts around 100 or 200 and can go right up to 12,000 or more on some cameras. We're going to make our sensor very light sensitive, so we'll be putting our ISO right up to about 3200 or 6400. Just a note, the higher the ISO number and the more sensitive that your camera is to light, the more noise will creep into your image, eventually breaking it up so that the quality is bad. We have to find the best balance between speed versus quality. So what is shutter speed? It's like a door that opens and closes to let the light into your camera. Usually it opens and closes really fast. So fast that it's only open for about 1/250th of a second. That does not let in much light because it all happens so fast, but this means that you don't get any camera shake either. We're going to slow down our shutter speed to let in a lot of light, so that door is going to stay open for a long time. This means our photo will be blurry if our camera is not completely still, and that's why we have it mounted on a tripod. We're going to open our shutter speed to 20 seconds by selecting it and then turning the dial. The next thing to set up is our camera's aperture. The aperture is the ring in your camera's lens that opens and closes like the iris in your eye to let in more or less light. We want the aperture fully open to let in as much light as we can get. Aperture has a funny way of being referenced in your camera, and it usually starts with an F. You want the lowest number that your camera can give you, so you might get f4.0, which is okay. f3.5 is better. And if you are lucky, you might have a very light sensitive lens, which goes to f2.8, f1.8, or even lower. You find the aperture setting on your camera, you adjust the dial to the lowest that will go. Yours might not look like mine. There is a rule called the 500 rule, which is you give me $500 and I'll tell you what the rule is. No, seriously, you use this rule to work out the best shutter speed for your lens to avoid leaving your shutter open for too long. If your shutter is open for too long, your stars go from being sharp little points of light to little smears due to the fact that they're moving across the sky. Now here is the rule. Divide the number 500 by your zoom length or your focal length. If you were shooting a focal length of about 18 millimeters, that would give you around 25 seconds. I'm shooting at 24 millimeters, which gives me 20 seconds. I find generally a time of in between 15 and 25 seconds will give you good results, so just experiment with your camera. Finally, we're going to put our camera onto a 2-second self-timer. This means we'll get no camera shake when we press the button to take the picture. You'll press the button and the camera will count down 2 seconds before taking the photo, and that should stop any shaking. So if you've somehow lost your focus, or you've arrived late at your location and it's already dark, look through your viewfinder and find a distant object and try and focus in on that. I have a powerful torch with me, and I use this torch to light something in the distance, usually about 25 to 35 meters away, and that gives me a good focal point to then lift my camera up and photograph the stars. Oh my God, so now all of that's out of the way and it's really getting dark. Let's get to photographing these stars. That's it, and I hope you've learned something. Get out there and experiment, and if you have any questions, put them down in the comments below. I'll catch you next time. And if you are lucky, you might have a very light sensitive lens which has an f2 point car with another car and waiting for the car to go. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. More cars, more cars. Almost there. It's getting cold, man. Wow. Some guy would do this in a t-shirt. Oh my God, now there's a really loud motorbike. I'm not winning. Another car. Fruitcake.